In this section, we will implement barriers to add challenges and restrictions to the player's movement. Barriers will serve as obstacles that block certain paths and require the player to navigate strategically around them. We will configure the barriers to detect collisions, trigger appropriate animations, and reload the game when the player fails to avoid them. This will enhance gameplay dynamics and introduce a layer of complexity to the game environment. We start by modifying our scene to enhance the road network. This involves creating an additional section of connected roads that includes intersections designed for left turns. By adding this expanded network, we provide the player with more dynamic navigation options, ensuring the gameplay incorporates left turns seamlessly. These adjustments will make the environment more versatile and engaging, setting the stage for more complex mechanics. We achieve this by duplicating the road and road_intersection_x prefabs and arranging them to form another closed-loop network. This expanded layout will incorporate additional intersections to allow for left turns, creating a more dynamic and versatile road system. Next, we will add 2 additional animations to enhance the gameplay. The first is a forward fall animation, used when the character stumbles while attempting to jump over an obstacle. The second is a backward fall animation, triggered when the character collides head-on with a barrier. While these animations can be downloaded from Mixamo, for convenience, they have already been included in the assets package you downloaded earlier. Navigate to the AJ folder where you will find the 2 new animations, falling from losing balance and shoulder hit and fall. For each of these animations, go to the Rig tab and select the avatar definition to be copied from other avatar. After that, open the Animator window, right-click, and create 2 trigger parameters. One is called hit_foot and the other hit_body. Then right-click and create an animation state. Rename it to Hitbody. Select the motion field to shoulder hit and fall. After that, create another empty animation state and name it HitFoot. Select the motion field to falling from losing balance. Now create one transition from any state to hit body with transition condition set to trigger hit_body, and another transition from any state to hit foot with transition condition set to hit_foot. Next, we will configure the barriers in the scene. Navigate to the City Props Bundle folder, where you will find a subfolder named Prefabs. Inside this folder, locate the prefab named road_barrier_concrete. We will use this prefab as the barrier to block off roads where we want to restrict the player's movement. Double-click the prefab to open it for editing. Add a box collider component to the prefab, ensuring it aligns properly with the barrier. Save the changes to the prefab and position it at multiple locations within the intersections to block off areas where the road does not extend. Essentially, we are using these barriers to restrict the player's movement to designated paths. After placing the barriers, reopen the prefab as we need to add a rigid body component. Once added, enable the Is Kinematic option and freeze all position and rotation constraints to ensure the barriers remain static and do not interfere with gameplay physics. Create a new tag named Barrier and assign it to the prefab. Navigate to the Scripts folder, right-click, and create a new script named BarrierCollision. Double-click the script to open it in Visual Studio. We create a new method called onTriggerEnter to handle interactions between the player and barriers during gameplay. This method is automatically called when the player's collider enters a trigger collider, allowing us to detect and respond to collisions dynamically. Before implementing this, we initialize the required components in the start method. We retrieve the animator component from the game object to control animations during gameplay, and also set up the player controller for potential future interactions. Additionally, the script includes a public audio source and an audio clip, allowing us to play sound effects when collisions occur. Within the onTriggerEnter method, we check if the object the player collides with has the tag barrier using the compareTag function. If the condition is met, a debug message, body collision with barrier, is logged to confirm the event during testing or development. The animator component is then used to trigger the hit_body animation, visually representing the player's reaction to the collision. Simultaneously, the audio source plays the specified audio clip using the play one-shot function, adding an auditory cue for the collision. In the Unity editor, attach the BarrierCollision script to the AJ game object. Next, add an audio source component to the same game object and assign it to the audio source field in the BarrierCollision script. Then, navigate to the audio folder and assign the Pane 5 inches audio clip to the Clip Collide field in the script. Now, open the road_barrier_concrete prefab one more time, as we forgot to check the Is Trigger option for the box collider. Save the prefab and click Play. In the Scene View window, zoom in on the barrier directly in front of the player's forward direction. Wait for the character to collide with the barrier. Upon collision, the hit_body trigger should activate the shoulder hit and fall animation, and the audio clip should play simultaneously. It worked, but the character's body appears to penetrate the barrier. To fix this, we will increase the width of the barrier's box collider. Open the road_barrier_concrete prefab. Adjust the box collider's size along the z-axis to 1.5, and save the changes to the prefab. Click Play. This time, the collision and fall animations appear more realistic and improved. At the moment when the player falls, the game comes to a halt. To address this, we will implement a feature to reload the scene and restart the game after the player dies. Begin by renaming the current scene to Runner. Open the Build Settings window and click on the Add Open Scenes. Next, open the player controller script in Visual Studio by double-clicking on it. We will add a new function called Dead to handle the player's death and restart the game. When the Dead function is called, it schedules the execution of another method, Reload Scene, using Unity's invoke function. The Reload Scene method is set to run after a delay of 5 seconds, providing a brief pause to display the character's fall animation or any other post-death effects before restarting the game. The Reload Scene function uses Unity's SceneManager.loadScene method to reload the current scene, which we have named Runner. This effectively resets the game, bringing the player back to the starting point. Next, open the BarrierCollision script and add a private variable named PlayerController to reference the PlayerController component. In the Start method, assign the PlayerController component to the PlayerController variable. Then, modify the collision logic so that when a collision occurs, the PlayerController.dead method is called. In the Unity editor, click Play and wait for the player to collide with a barrier. After the collision, the game should automatically reload. This concludes our current section, Implementing Barriers. In the next section, we will focus on implementing the slide obstacle.